Hello everyone, I'm Erik Sprowls and I was the director and creator of In Neon.
And I'm Ted Froats, I was Jack DeRay. And as you can see, the goatee was a glue-on.
Yeah, it takes me a while to get used to you without that too.
Yep.
And for the next hour, what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at behind the scenes of episode 7. Can't believe it came that far. And take you on a bit of a tour at what we did to make that particular episode come to life. So come on along. You know, I don't think I told you this, and I was waiting for this commentary. I have a surprise for you. This is for Ted. He played Jack. The day of auditions, I watched about 30 people come through, and they were still coming. And I said, "Oh my God, there's no one here that can play Jack." And because at the point I had Jared who plays Brett and Dante who plays Mark. I was thinking about flip-flopping those guys at one point. But I didn't have anybody that could play Jack, so don't let this go to your head. But when you came in, you were probably my first and last choice for the character of Jack. I couldn't see you as anybody else.
Oh, thank you very much.
Now you pay me with a huge compliment.
All right. Well, here's my compliment for you. The night before, it's about the first time. The night before the audition was about the first time I'd ever gone drinking. And this girl convinces me, "Hey, there's this audition, you should go do it." So I had nothing prepared at all. I just sort of showed up and drunken spur of the moment idea and auditioned.
Well, I guess that's a compliment.
Sort of.
It's kind of ironic. What you're looking at here is the opening of episode 7. And believe it or not, I got the idea to do this. I wish I could say this was an original idea. But I do give credit where credit is due. This was an idea I had from watching an episode of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. They started the show with a narration by a character at the time on the show played by Seth Green, who was Oz. And he did this whole narration thing in the beginning. And by the end of the episode, it was like it came full circle, and he narrated the end of it. And I thought it was kind of neat because when Mary, who plays Cindy, narrates that opening, she's talking about... it's ironic the things that happen in life and how everything affects everything else. And she says, and she basically summarizes everything that happens in this show. Mm-hmm. You know, when you bump into somebody by accident, which is when Jared bumps into the police officer in the street, or a phone call from someone you didn't expect, you know, or a letter, you know, that's the one that you get. Mm-hmm. And at the end of it, it's like, or an argument that didn't really mean anything at the time was taken a little bit more seriously than usual. Thus, the cliffhanger at the end of the episode. Right. And we'll get into that later, but. This episode, this particular installment was done in about 10 degrees. It looks like it's because if you look outside, there's snow everywhere, and the heat wasn't on in this house, so we were all freezing to death. This was a nice little visual plant that Grant did, or not a plant, but an idea he did. When Bree turns around here and she's looking around at all the flowers, he kind of whistles and walks out. And he said, "What if I kind of sneak back in and take a rose?"
That's just hilarious. I love that.
I thought that's typical of any guy. You know, it's beautiful.
That picture with me, Kim, and Kermit was a big problem. Every time I had to look at that picture, which is just about every episode, I'd just bust out laughing. I couldn't look at Kermit with a straight face.
I remember doing this scene, I don't know, what, a dozen times?
At least.
Because you would laugh wholeheartedly in the middle of it, and I said, "What the hell are you laughing at?" You said, "I just can't quit laughing at Kermit the Frog."
And watch my shirt. Well, it's gone now, but it was a Slippery Rock shirt, which later on is a different shirt because my dryer ate that one between takes.
That's the greatest thing about working with independents or bargain basement shows. You know, it's like the things you don't see, and that's supposed to be a letter that Booth offered you from New York. And you're making the decision, and it carries over for a few episodes because it shows how important it is to you as an actor. You know, you're offered a chance of a lifetime to go to New York. You're going to stab your best friend in the back, or not, and plays a significant part of the entire series. This is downtown California. This is about, what, 2 blocks from the university, and it's just a gas station. I want to get out of campus. You know, there's a point where you do a lot of stuff in the house and then campus. You want to move on. And I just wanted to have a little outside meeting in the daytime. I liked it because Jared, who plays Brett, is the big drug dealer in town, or the retired drug dealer. And he knows all the police. And the police have some respect for him, you know, and he has some respect for them, and it's all told in this scene why. The officer is played by Jason Conaway, who I'd worked on in another series called Fright Night Friday that we had produced at the university. It was actually syndicated coast to coast at one time. And I wanted to have a little scene where it was kind of dark. That's why we have this dark shot of the alley. I think it was kind of nice how it took a place in the alley because, you know, Brett doesn't want to be seen with the officer, and the officer doesn't want to be seen with Brett, but they do have a mutual respect for each other because over the years, you have that kind of thing between opponents, you know. And so for the first time in the show, you realize that when the officer's talking to Brett, even though Brett's made some bad choices in life with drugs and that kind of thing, he says, you never let it get to your head. And you didn't string out little kids, you didn't use heroin, you know. And at most college campuses like that, you know, as much as, you know, people try to stop it, it becomes a part of life there. You know, the choices you make with should I or should I not use drugs, and Brett's character kind of became the mother figure of the campus because he would decide who was responsible enough, who was going to try it and who wasn't. He says, you never let all the problems happen, you know, you're pretty responsible in what you did. But at the end of it, you know, I didn't want the police to seem like it was okay with him. He nails this right here.
I don't respect what you've done, Turney, but I do respect the fact that you were responsible in choosing your customers wisely. That's why I'm going to be sorry to see you go, man.
So the police actually say, you know, we don't like what you did, but if you had to do it, at least you were responsible with what you did. Mm-hmm. So I remember he was telling all these sexual jokes and all these far shots too. Jason Conaway's a real character. Hilarious and a half.
What's this?
And of course, I've never smoked in my life, so just about every smoking scene just looks awful.
I know, and it's twice as bad because they're 100s. And it looks like you got this giant pen in your mouth. And I remember in the first episode, you actually lit the wrong end.
Yep.
And,
yep. See, it's still smoking there. That hurt.
I know. Here's the funny part. You put the cigarette behind your ear, but didn't you light it?
Yep.
Isn't your ear on fire?
Oh, I zipped up my jacket so you can't see I'm wearing the wrong shirt at this point.
Oh, that's right. Good thinking. Now, I like we had fun during this time. We were running out of daylight, I remember, but I kept making fun of Jess, who plays Laura, because she had metallic pants on. And I loved those, and she kept saying, I bet you really love these pants on me. I was like, you betcha.
You were damn right she would. So why are you going to do this
It's
to
a
her?
good scene between you two.
She'd do it to me.
Has some real intensity to it.
Think twice about my feelings when she left. When she left us, the group.
A lot of argument scenes do. Mm-hmm. You know, she's starting. You realize you almost slipped there, and you almost said, "Well, she didn't think about me when she left." You know, despite of how I feel about her, and that's a nice little key that we do there. Every time you go to light a cigarette or something in the whole show, I think until the very last episode.
Right.
Did you smoke in the last episode?
I did.
I think we tried.
In the last episode, yeah.
Something happens. It's a nice little plant that goes on throughout the whole series. You always try to have a cigarette, and somebody either whips it from your mouth, or you like you were sitting there on the steps lighting it, and she interrupted you with something. And that's a neat little visual. It's just like the one we do with Brett and Mrs. Filbert. You know, every time Mrs. Filbert's around, something goes wrong.
And she's got a different pet every time, too. I thought she should have come out with a goldfish at some point. I was walking the goldfish bowl.
She should have had about 20 cats. We're talking about Mrs. Filbert, played by Barb Peffer, who was actually, I think, 20 years old, and she looked about 60. It's supposed to be a turning point for you. You know, Laura really drives it home about, you know, you have this chance to go to New York. You're really going to stab her in the back. She took her best shot at you there. And you're like, yep, you bet. I'm still going. And she's real pissed off. And she made her best play to talk to you. And then she decides to pull out the letter and say, well, Kim has something to say about it. Maybe that'll change your mind.
This came for you today.
People still write letters?
They do if they don't have a computer. It's an email from Kim.
I like this song that plays every time something goes on between Jack and Kim. It's their little theme song.
Yeah, it's a, well, there goes her metallic pants up. I love those pants on her. That's a song by Yanni, actually. And I kind of call it Jack and Kim's theme. Occasionally I do use it for other important scenes, just because it's a beautiful piece, you know. And It kind of summarizes what's going on. Now, I remember the transition here. We were lucky. Some former students of mine, CUTV students, Ryan Kuntz, who we affectionately called Woodchuck, and Mike Kupka, and Sean McCardle, all moved to New York to hit it big. And I called them one day, and they had a DVC camera, and I said, could you shoot me some stock footage? So this is actually our second unit now, if you want to talk about it, in New York, who got the shots of the Empire State Building, that kind of thing. And it happened so close. An interesting story is, I asked them to get this footage for me on around September 3rd of 2001. And they said, yeah, we'll go out this weekend or next week or something. And of course, 9/11 happened. And thus you don't see the Trade Center. And Ryan called me a few days after that. He said, you know, the ironic part was, we were planning on going on top of the Trade Center to get you some really high shots of New York. And I remember I was speechless at the time. And he said we were planning on going out either the Monday or Tuesday or whatever day it happened, like in that area. Not necessarily that day, but in that day or two before or after. And I was, wow, talk about lucky.
Yeah.
Why is that?
This particular scene is shot at the State Theater in Uniontown. I needed something that was not Cal U. And there's only a couple stages here at the university, but you could tell they look like college, you know, theater settings. And I didn't want that. I wanted something that looked more professional, obviously. And we lucked out because the State Theater in Uniontown is in our viewing area. And it's gorgeous. Look at that. And the architecture there is just wonderful. But when you use a wide-angle lens and shoot it wide, it also doubles as a... it could be a theater in New York, a small theater in New York. This scene was written by Amber herself. Originally, Kim was not supposed to appear in the entire series. She was supposed to appear in the first episode when she left. And then you have all these storylines that go on in between, and then she comes back in the last episode. I guess I'm kind of revealing the end there.
Well, you gave it away. They're not going to watch it now.
Yeah, why bother? I won't tell you what happens, though, but we might have changed it. But Amber wasn't happy because she realized how good it was, how it was taking off, and she was a little disappointed that her character didn't have a larger part. So I remember sitting down in countless meetings with her, and she would badger me and tell me she wanted to have her part expanded. And I said, sure, why don't you write something? So she wrote it, and I said, but it's still, you can have your part expanded, but it still has to have the same feel. So you realize there's a big things happening, and she has to choose between really her friends and seeing her name in neon lights.
Right.
And that's really the story is about. I don't want to say the story is about her, but the title of the story is about her because it's all about the friendship that goes on back home that she's missing out on. You know, she kind of left the nest early to try to hit it big, and she's missing out on all this wonderful things back home. And so she wrote this scene herself about getting an opportunity to leave the country for good to work with Her Majesty's Theater. Is it Her Majesty's Theater?
Her Royal Majesty's
Royal Theater or something. I can't remember. Amber did a pretty good job.
The Mom's Queen's Theater.
She did some research on the internet. She researched Sarah Brightman, the whole Phantom of the Opera perspective, and she worked very hard on this scene. There's some other scenes throughout the series that everybody wanted to take their shot at writing. I don't think you did. Did you?
I don't remember.
It seems like such a blur.
I don't think I did. I think I just made suggestions throughout.
I know she wrote this one, or the storyline with her character here. And Jess Vader wrote a scene coming up with Mary. In a few episodes, there's a cake fight.
Oh, she wrote that?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
And Jared wrote the closing scene between him and Dante.
How about for good?
Matt Conrad pulled this off fairly well. When I always thought of Kim and Booth, I pictured him as the devil. You know, and you just can't see him coming. That's why I wanted him in white all the time. You know, because they always say, you know, the devil has many forms. The kind you fear the most is when you don't see him as the devil. Well, he's offering her really the brass monkey. You know, all this stuff saying, you know, here's all these opportunities. All you have to do is screw your friends over and say, see ya, you know? So is it really worth doing this at the sacrifice of all your friends, you know?
This could be something really great for you.
And he says, you know, now you have a chance to leave the country for good. But of course she's thinking of you.
Of course. How sweet. And this leads into a dream sequence, which isn't in this episode, but one of my favorite scenes, and the last scene that I ever shot.
I really like this scene too. The music's familiar, but it was just perfect, I thought. I mentioned the name Neon Lights in 2 episodes out of the whole series, only twice, but I thought it was appropriate right there. You know, this is the 7th episode long, so we kind of need to like a little bit of a relaunch to remember, to keep everybody in perspective of what the whole story was about. Because she's missing out on everything back home, you know. That's the whole point there.
I have no idea what's happening in this scene.
Well,
I don't remember.
It's this is a scene where Brett finds out that the flowers that he got for Jennifer Burns, Jen, played by Briante Alfonso, worked, and she's like, well, you know, maybe we can get together and work and blah, blah, blah. And he kind of enjoys it. She's like, maybe we can get together and practice again. You know, I'm kind of sorry that we had our problems. And he's pretty happy about it. His little plan worked. And it's another thing I do in it's a little thing I do in all the movies. The Steeler poster off on his left, I always put something about the Steelers in every episode. You just got to find it. You know, Hitchcock has his cameos.
Right.
And,
Spielberg and the Shooting Stars.
right, and Frank Capra with his bird. I can't remember the name of his bird. It's a crow that he put in his movies. So then he comes downstairs and he thought he'd made some progress, and it turns out she's on the phone with her boyfriend, and she's saying how much she really misses her boyfriend.
I know, I can't wait to see you either.
But the thing,
Oh, go ahead.
no, go ahead.
When I first read the first episode, before I'd met any of the cast, and I read the role of Brett, I pictured this really small, wiry Italian guy or something like that, and I saw Jared, and I thought, oh no, this was horribly miscast. And then when I saw him, it just incredible actor, definitely the best that I've ever personally met. So I was really impressed with the
Jared did a
way
really
he handled everything.
He did a really good job. Very impressive man. He's working in Hollywood now. And we were just talking about this before we started the commentary. He got a bit part in Charlie's Angels 2. He's very talented. He'll go places. I can just tell. So, but what the scene is that you don't understand is whenever he came and he saw her on the phone, he couldn't see her face. And she's kind of going through the motions of like, yeah, I really miss you too, and yeah, blah, blah. And then when he leaves, that's when she holds up the flowers and says, but it's the little things that count, because that's one of the flowers that he had gotten for her. And she's starting to cave, basically.
And this scene here, I have no idea what I'm reading. It's definitely not, like, I have no idea what's going to be playing in the background. I'm just reading this blank piece of paper and thinking.
I remember whenever we were shooting stuff with you, it'd be like, you have to walk around like Bruce Wayne all the time and brood. And
Look at my shoes.
Look at your shoes a lot.
Yep.
And I remember I laughed. I was walking down the street. You can't really tell here. I remember laughing because as you're brooding, walking around, I thought of an episode of Friends where Joey Tribbiani tells Rachel how he has the smell the fart acting. Did you ever hear about that?
No.
and she says, what? The smell the fart acting? What's that? And he says, you know, it's like when somebody says something really intense and he kind of goes, you know, and he kind of looks up in the air and smells, breathes in a heavy sigh like, what was that? You know? So I remember we used to have this joke between you and I. It's like, just sit there and look at your shoes and brood.
Yep.
And this was kind of I couldn't find a crew this night. So but I wanted to shoot it at night because it's a transitional scene. And we didn't have any lighting. You know, we had nothing because it was just you and I, if I remember correctly.
Jack, I know that
And
you are chasing your dreams.
Amber actually, her voice, if you listen to it,
Chase them, no matter what I've done.
is kind of echoing. And I had her read that in a stairwell. So it would sound like, "Oh, Jack, I really, really, really miss you, miss you, miss you." She read it in the stairwell outside of my office. And I think what I do remember what you're reading. You're looking at a letter on the left. The gold one is a letter we got from CUTV. We did a Santa Claus show here. It says,
"Oh yeah,
come now and send your letter to the Santa Claus show." And I think on the left,
is that a copy of the script?
I think it might be a part of the script.
But like what I was supposed to, like Kim's commentary isn't actually on the script. It was written later, so I still had no idea what I'd be looking at.
I got a couple of shots of California's campus there. I was unsure about this transition because basically, unless you've really done cinematography or filmmaking, you know, it's all in your back. But fortunately, it was just light enough where you could see the clouds spin around for a transition, so it kind of goes up. And when it comes down the other side, there's a gymnasium over there where we pick up the basketball game. I wish it was lit a little bit better. It's my cell phone. People want to talk to me. I'm a busy man. But it transitions to the basketball court. I really wasn't sure about if it would have worked or not.
And of course, there was no snow outside, but at the end of the episode, horrible snowstorm. Huge blizzard hits in about 20 minutes.
This is actual footage of a real basketball game at California University. The gentleman there you saw was actually Coach Brown, who's the coach of the Vulcans here. And we shot this at halftime of a ball game because we ran over the lines real quick because we realized you have 15 minutes to do this shoot between these two. Both reverse angles. But you can't lose the crowd, and you can't be distracting to take it away from the game. So at halftime, we shot this scene with one camera, back and forth, very briefly, and they had to have their lines down. And the athletic director of California University wanted to have a cameo. He was bugging me for a cameo in the soap opera. His name's Tom Pucci. Great guy, very funny. And just when they get up to leave, you'll see him briefly seated between them. And there he is. And he was like, "That's my big part?" I'm like, "Well, you know," because during the whole scene, he was actually standing there looking at the camera. I said, "I can't use this, Tom. Why? Because you're looking right at me." You know? So, so as they do in all soap operas, you know, they go out of the gymnasium, which actually here is our student union building, just because we wanted to have it lit. It was easier to do. It's right out back where CUTV is located. And as all soap operas go, you know, you have your people get together, and then but you got to break them up. You got to break them apart. The best thing about soap operas is the intensity before the kiss. The finale is the kiss. You know, when they're all together, who cares? You know, so we had to create some tension between these two. That was building for a while. You know, you had people looking at Mark saying, "Well, do you really want to be with her? I mean, she's been around," you know, basically saying she's a whore. You know, and then you look at her and you say, "Well, do you really want to be with Mark? I mean, he's blind." So in a couple episodes prior to this one, you know, we showed her at the library and people staring, and then you showed him and he's wondering, well, there's a rumor out there, and it was supposed to be a running joke in the script, but it became so funny and we used it so often that I didn't realize it, that she dated the basketball team. You know, and it became like a joke, but we've used it 3 or 4 times throughout, so I thought that's kind of like what we wanted Laura to be. You know, maybe she did date the basketball team, like the whole team. You know, that's kind of funny. So this is really a transitional scene that we needed to break these two up. And it starts off fairly innocent, but it develops into an argument that neither one can take back. We were shooting here this night. If you look in the background, there's a couple of dorms. One of them is McCloskey Hall. It's the one over to the left of her right there. While we're shooting, this is probably about, well, we shot from about 10 o'clock till 2 o'clock in the morning on this one. There's always one drunken idiot, you know, who's hanging out the window saying, "Ha ha, you suck! You know, ha ha, oh, you suck!" And, you know, you're trying to shoot a scene, and they're supposed to be really into the argument or very tearful or whatever. And then you have some big fat guy sticking his butt crack out the window saying, "Hey, see you, TV!" You know, so we had to call security on him just because we couldn't get anything accomplished. They kept, you know, and this went on for 4 solid hours. I'm like, isn't this guy ever going to pass out? You know?
Yet.
Dante did a pretty good job of being. I think everybody was.
And Jess was definitely my favorite of the actresses. They all did well, of course.
They did really good jobs.
Yeah.
A lot of people questioned the casting I had for the certain scenes in this. I think everybody did a pretty good job. There were some that I thought were really outstanding.
Like me.
Like you, of course. What is it you sign whenever you email me, your favorite actor?
Yeah.
But there are some that that just weren't polished. But you know, when you deal with a no budget production, and no one's paid for it, it's all supposed to be fun. And
About me? You're worried about yourself.
and it's a student production. They're supposed to be learning here. So I mean, this is like see that window up there, the guy moving around? That's him, Mr. Fat Guy. He's the one who stuck his butt out, and he says, "Hey, look at me." You know.
Sure it wasn't Dustin? I think that's his dorm.
It might have been. Dustin's one of our crew members.
Loaf Nut.
How did you come up with that nickname for
One of the episodes, Jennifer is in a concert, and there's a sign that says Jennifer on flute, and I switched around the letters of on flute and came up with Loaf Nut, and then that just sort of became him.
Oh, that's right. That was the 5th episode. And then she realizes here she said the wrong thing, and she says, "Whoops, I didn't mean to." I think the line was something like, "You're never going to find anybody because something about you're blind as a bat, or you're never going to get any better at anything, or something." And she said it the wrong way, and he says, "Well, okay, I'm out of here." And she tries to apologize, but Dante kept trying to hit this mark. I kept saying, "You have to stop here, say a line, and move," and he kept missing it. And working with Dante was
fun.
Not quite the word I'd use. I'd say an adventure, because Dante's a very good actor. I mean, he nailed it being blind. It's just that, and he had very little experience acting before this, but he had no patience. So if something didn't go right, he would constantly remind me. This is your fault. He needed something to direct his anger at, so I was a big pincushion for him. But I think these two had chemistry on the show. Jess seemed to have chemistry with whatever scene she was in. You had good chemistry with her in a couple episodes with the kiss at the door and the argument scenes. She's a very good actress to work with. I don't want to say the best.
Right.
One of the best that I've had the chance to work with. She's done a really good job. And she always comes prepared. And she's light. She's late. She does come to shoots
Not
late.
the latest, though.
No,
definitely not the latest.
That award definitely goes to Amber, who plays Kim. But
days late.
Like, it's all right. We have a shoot on Tuesday at 1 o'clock. We'll see you on Friday.
This episode here. I'm sorry, not episode. This scene here. I don't think was in the original script, because I remember seeing this like long after it was produced and put out there, and I loved it because I hadn't read it in the script. This whole scene's just hilarious.
It's kind of funny because you look in the background, the TV's just on the fritz, and that's really what that TV's doing. This is like the definition of a hick bar. This is another college bar in town. We did a scene here with you before.
Right.
It's supposed to be like the local hangout bar for you guys. And you're right, we kind of wrote this on the spur of the moment because I wanted to have something that, he's all upset because he's trying to make these moves on Jen, and she's not responding. I like his look here when her hands go through his hair like, ew. Marla's played by Raina Martin, who is another great actress I worked with on another show, Fright Night Friday. And Raina auditioned as well. And I had her in mind for Jen's character, Bree's character, Jennifer Burns, at one time. And it kind of came down between her and Bree, and they were both equally as good. They both did a good audition, and I'd worked with Raina, and I was kind of leaning toward her just simply because I didn't know Bree that well. I knew of Bree, but I didn't know Bree. but came down to one of those things where Raina had a difficult work schedule. She worked every single day, and she lived out of town. And I thought that would be a big problem.
Yeah.
And they both had a good audition. It was not to undercut Bree or not to undercut Raina. They both did a really good job. But the woman you're looking at here almost ended up as Jennifer Burns.
Stuff.
But she had time that night to come down and actually have a drink.
Grace us with her presence.
And shoot a scene. And this is a funny scene, too, because, you know, she's like, she kind of plays this catty bitch. He says, yeah, you're like dating this band geek, you know, and how about like you don't want a real woman, go out with me.
Great. And your intro to music class.
And
Come on. How long is that gonna last?
we ordered, if you see in the background, just over Jared's shoulder there is a head. That's Joe DePippa, who Jared moved to Hollywood with last summer. Joe actually is now working on the series Boston Public. He's done some work on Buffy the Vampire Slayer. You'll see him in a second in a cameo. He blows Jared a kiss. And just over on Joe's left, that you can't see, Cleve came that night. Which he's in the scene later, but you know I was just impressed that he came that night. And he went and got these chicken fingers, and he kept talking how good they were. And he kept walking back and through the scene, getting more. And I was like, dude, we're shooting. And he's like, oh, I'm sorry.
Sometimes then you do it again?
Yeah. Or he'd say something really funny or make a fart noise.
You don't like girls or something?
I think Raina is a really good actress. One of, and you don't know her as, I don't think
I've never met her.
You've never met her. Probably one of the very best I've ever worked with. I've worked with some real clunkers, but she has some real timing, and she's supposed to be acting like she had a couple here, you know, and she does a very good job of that.
Gay.
Not because you don't want her to be all falling down drunk, but you want her to be like, oh, you're gay, huh?
He's gay.
I knew it.
And I like that line too. That was kind of cute.
That guy? He's gay.
Spills the beer all over himself.
Yeah. I wish we could have had
You're
Raina
not
on
gay.
more. She was really good. That's Joe DePippa. He moved off with Jared to Los Angeles and got a job. I remember when Grant showed up with that shirt on, who plays Cleve there. I said, where'd you get that shower curtain? He goes, this is class. And I'm like, okay.
Band geeks, be my guest. I'm out of here.
There goes Raina. That's the last and only time you see her. And I wish we could have expanded her in some way. She was a great actress to work with. Very dependable, too. I almost didn't put that scene in there because I thought I was going to get some flack on it from somebody. You know how everything has to be so PC nowadays, especially when you're doing a college movie that represents your university. But I said, the heck with it. Just put it in there. There's another cameo of Dustin walking by. He appears in about 50 episodes. Anyway, go ahead.
I wear a Slippery Rock shirt half the time. It didn't have to be a depiction of our campus.
I remember there's about 4 major shirts that you wore in this.
Yeah, the Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat.
The boat sank, get over it.
Yeah.
And the Slippery Rock shirt's in one. Yep. In fact, it isn't until the last episode that I think you
wear a completely different shirt.
You wore a button down. I think you wore the one from the first episode, but it was buttoned.
I have no idea. I don't remember.
It's a scene that you'll see later where you know, you come out of a building and you watch Mary make her walk down Senior Walk.
Oh, yeah.
I like this. This is because this is like the guy perspective on dating, and they have a couple drinks in them. You know, they've been there moping all night. And it's just the guy things that you would hear him say, the drunken crap.
Here's to alcohol. The problem and solution to all life's little problems.
That's got to be a bumper sticker.
That's a line we took from The Simpsons.
Oh.
Because you know how everybody watches The Simpsons, you know. And I said, why not mix it up a little bit? Now, this was a really touching scene about college, and Jared sums it up right here, big line.
Don't realize how great it is until it's gone.
And I thought that Grant had some very nice timing here to deliver like, wow, that's really serious.
I gotta throw up. Watch my beer.
And then he just walks out, you know, it's like the big punch. And I liked it. He had some good timing with that. Here we are back at the Bat Cave with Bruce Wayne brooding. We did a lot of
the Kermit picture.
Yours and Kim is the big relationship, I think, of the whole series. It's the whole defining moment, and you know, you have like, you know, You have that on. Remember, General Hospital had your Luke and Laura.
No, I don't.
Well, I'm sure that's because you're young. There was Luke and Laura on General Hospital. There was Cruz and Eden on Santa Barbara. Every soap opera has their big relationship, you know, eternally together but forever apart. And that's you. Now, I always saw Bill Bennett as a professor I had when I went to school here years ago. He ran the California Times at the time. And he was one of the few, when I originally wrote in Neon, when I was graduate school, that I envisioned as the character I wrote it for. And so whenever I wrote Dr. Ettling into this script years ago, before I even knew you or anybody, I said, he's Dr. Ettling. You know, Michael Slavin come along as Filosi, and he does it really well. You know, he can play the badass to the hilt, but I think Bill is the only one here that was actually
in the original cast.
In the original cast, yeah. And I like this scene too because you're a little confused. You know, you finally admit that what your problem is. Have you ever had a decision you had to make? Bill kind of sits down and says the fatherly advice.
Regional theater, some shows in New York. One day he got a call from an agent.
We went back and forth on this for a couple hours to stay on what movie that they should be referencing, because how old is Dr. I've forgotten his name, but how old is he?
Dr. Ettling.
Thank you, Dr. Ettling.
That's the greatest. I remember at the closing party. Remember, I'm going to have a trivia quiz, and whoever wins the trivia quiz gets the movie poster of the show. Because everybody's like, I don't remember even my character's name. Who did I play? I'm like, oh, that tells you how great they. But I think it's a neat little story because he tries to screw your head on straight by saying, you know, there was one time a gentleman I knew who was in your similar situation who had a chance at stardom, and I thought, well, you know, maybe there'll be another chance when the wheel goes round, and I'll take another shot. And the wheel didn't go around. And the point I wanted to make in this scene was, you know, he gets your attention like, well, what'd he do? You know, and he's speaking about himself. You know, that, you know, he was, you know, it's all fictitious, of course, but in the story, he was up for the character of Norman Bates. And in 1960s Psycho, 60, and had a chance to work with the master of suspense. And he said, well, you know, I'm not going to do it. I'll be another chance. And he doesn't really say that it was him that did it. He's trying to get you to think, you know. And I remember when I showed this to my parents, I was very disappointed. I said, what'd you think about that? He says, well, it's a shame that he couldn't help out that guy. I said, what do you mean? He says, well, he's telling this story about the guy in Psycho, and it's a shame he couldn't help him out some way. I said, Mom, he's the guy. Oh, I just didn't understand that.
He says it, doesn't he? Or maybe he doesn't.
He kind of implies it when he says...
Because I say, is that a true story? But I don't know. I don't remember if he says it or not.
Well, he kind of, you know, the scene goes on, and finally, you know, he screws your head and says, you got to take that chance. But right here, he stands up and the mood changes. But he didn't have such a bad life. The guy went on to have a wonderful family and a home. And
married, wonderful family, loving wife, beautiful children, fine, gorgeous home, pretty much everything a man would want.
So he says, you know, life isn't so bad.
Except,
you know. And here's
just
the big
remember,
line.
Jack, the only regrets you have in life are the risks you'd ever take.
I think that's the big line of the soap, too.
That's the repeated line of
Is that a true story?
You decide.
And he says, you decide. Meaning, when he leaves, this is a story you need to figure out for yourself. You know, now you decide, what are you going to do? You know, and you're like, thanks for all the help. You know, I might as well just, you know, give myself a paper cut and poured lemon juice on my arm, you know. So you have a lot of decisions to make. You know, he came in, he filled your head with some ideas, and out you go. We really do need to find another wardrobe for you.
I only own like 4 or 5 shirts.
This is
a new one.
The one you have on now?
Yeah.
Now the funny thing about Mary is,
Not good enough.
I always called it the joke, something about Mary. Her hair would change constantly. It was either short, red, pink, blonde, long, you know, curly. You know, in the next episode you see her, it's all really tight curl. And She has some good moments where she acts too. I mean, she gives that look like, what are you doing? This is about creepy and a half. And Michael Slavin delivers this really nice. He's good at being evil. I mean, he's got a lot of theater background. You can tell. You know, he comes on to her and he's like, gets shot down. Now he's a little pissed. You know. And she's a little like, well, what are you going to do?
Very uncooperative student, Cindy.
I would like to have shot this differently in some ways, but you know, when you deal with the audio, you have to have them do the soap opera walk, either into the close-up, because that's where your audio comes from. A lot of over-the-shoulder stuff. You know, I wish we could do that kind of stuff where you swing the camera and have your own Foley system, but...
I wish I had a pony.
we could have wrote you one in.
Why don't you just think?
Check his horseback riding to think about things.
This is a good scene, too, because he's kind of alluded to the fact that, you know, if you have sex with me, maybe I'll do something for you for the last few episodes until finally this is the one where he says, I'm tired of screwing around. You know, this is the way it's going to be. If you want to, you take me up on it, and I'll give you an A. If not, I'm going to fail you. And, you know, you hear about sexual harassment cases in the news all the time, and that's what I wanted to do in this one. You have some real prick. Hey, look, it's snowing now.
There it is.
Jared did a good job with this when he came in. He actually made this song up. Delivered it pretty good. And then we said, hey, how about if we drop the keys, and as you bend over to pick them up, your head hits the door, and it's open. Now, when he goes in, that's all he was supposed to do. We kind of cut. But then he came out and he ad-libbed this next part. Because he forgot his keys. Now, I thought this was hysterical.
I was looking for you.
I wanted the scene where he goes upstairs and you feel so sorry for him. He's so pathetic and he got all drunk because he's in love with this girl. And she just doesn't know it. You know, she's with the wrong guy. You know, and he's all pathetic and gross coming in the door. He's great at that. And all the flowers are gone. And
Where's all your flowers?
he's good at that.
Tom called earlier.
I remember everybody keeps telling me, when's Bree going to smarten up and go out with Jared? Or I'm sorry, when's Jen going to smarten up and go out with Brett? You know? Tom's a loser. You know? Now this is kind of funny. He gets all drunk and he says, well, he's not so great because, you know.
Oh, yeah.
Can he do this? And I remember when we first did this, the first couple takes, he'd go to juggle and it just looked really fake. You know. And the first time he actually caught them. And I was like, no, dude. I like it. He's great. He's all pathetic. And Bree's look is priceless. Like, that's neat. What else can you do? That's great. I actually, that's really Jared snoring. We kind of followed it in later, or folded it in later in a couple of scenes, but I think that's really him snoring there. And this particular night, Bree was a real trooper. She had the flu when we did this. And I told her, I said, listen, we'll just pack it up and do it another time. She says, no, no, no. I want to go through with it. Get it over with. I said, okay. So I got to commend her on that, too. And Jared's line right here is hilarious.
No, Mom, I'm just going to stay in bed. I don't feel like fighting crime. Let Superman save the world. Yeah, just bring me some nachos and a sponge and I'll be fine.
He says, bring me some nachos and a sponge. I think I laughed so hard. I don't know where he pulled this stuff out of. He totally ad-libbed that scene. And this is kind of cute here too. Bree, or Jen rather, crawls into bed and puts him to sleep. And it's totally innocent. You know, and you know, there's nothing sexual about this scene. You don't want anything sexual about this scene. They're in the same bed, just the fact that she really cares for him. But this snoring, this was totally ad-libbed on Jen's part, or Bree rather. He snores so loud, she's like, oh my God. She puts the pillow on his head like, ugh. She rolls over and goes to sleep the other way. I thought that was kind of cute too.
Now the major blizzard's hitting.
Yeah, we did this. There was a blizzard in town. We couldn't cancel. It was -2 degrees.
And the day before, we actually all showed up to do this shoot, and he said, come back tomorrow. I think there's going to be more trades tomorrow. And then, like, overnight, this huge blizzard hits.
Yeah, I remember that. And actually, I like it with the snow. It's more. It makes it look more desperate, you know. And Jess wore the sweater. You know, she's all pathetic, drinking her wild turkey, and I think that's. She said that was apple juice.
I don't believe it.
Yeah, well, you know, it was -2, and I wish I would have had some of it that night because it was so cold. And there's no train schedule for a train to come by here, so we would literally, remember, we would actually, we would say, okay, places, we do our bits without the train, but if a train were to come by and somebody heard it, we'd say, okay, set A, or whatever. I don't remember what the hell.
What side the train was coming on, and we'd try from different angles.
And we instantly move and shoot it with the train in the scene. And, you know, we'd intercut it all together. We had one camera, so it's tough to pull off something like that, especially when you don't have control of a train coming by. You don't know when it's coming.
And also with all the snow and the ice and everything, every time I'd go running to save Laura, I'd slip. It was just...
Yeah.
I'd go tumbling to the ground every time I was trying to play the hero.
I actually had one of the university administrators, not in this episode, it's the next episode, when the train comes by and you guys are, well, I'm sorry, no, it was this episode. She's on the tracks, and he's like, what are you thinking? I'm like, about what? He says, you've got her standing out on the train tracks with the thing coming by. I'm like, no, you don't understand. It's not real. I said it has to look real.
It's a fake train.
It has to look real, or else people are going to say it's fake. You know, it has to look real, or it's a TV show. You know, and basically, you know, Laura's whole life has gone to hell, and she's lost, you know, her man, and she has psychological problems from something that happened to her when she was younger, and
she's really not over Jack.
Yeah, that's why you're the hero here, you know, and she wants to kill herself. And we hadn't dealt with anything dark in Neon. Everything's been very light, very Three Musketeers-ish with fighting. And well, except for, you know, Jared.
Right.
Jared was stabbed and he was in the hospital, and that was kind of serious. But we never dealt with anything suicidal, you know, showing the darker side of one of our characters. And I thought Laura was the perfect one to do this with. And we only had, like, it was so cold, we didn't have a variety of shots to choose from. So we kept intercutting between that thing, the train, and you. You know, so there's not a whole hell of a lot to use. So at the end of it, we kind of slowed it down with slow motion.
Yeah, that wasn't Cindy's commentary throughout. It wasn't in the original script either, which I liked how that was added in there as well. Really added to it.
It was kind of nice, and Mary does a good job. And Laura, Jess at the time asked me, why didn't you use me? And I said, well, it's not about you. We're narrating it about you. The character, if the character narrates it, then the characters learned the lesson.
Right.
Cindy's playing the one.
And you know,
right,
that Laura survived then, because this is a cliffhanger. But with Mary talking, you'll know who, if anybody, survives this.
Something my parents were saying too, "Go get her, Jack."
I felt the same way. I was like, I am way too close to her.
Yeah.
I could just walk over, sort of shove her down, and walk back to where I'm standing, and the train won't come yet.
But you also have to think about it too. Nice ending here.
See what I mean.
And we always end with a cliffhanger. But the thing is, you know, you always have to end like, you know, everybody says, well, why don't you go get her? You know,
there's a freaking train coming.
Put yourself in the real position. Okay, there's a train coming, and now picture yourself there in real life, and it's speeding down. Are you going to be that quick to go run onto the tracks? Anything could happen. You could slip, you know.
As I did.
And as you can see, there's Mary's hair change. A lot of things happen in the next episode.
This is one of my favorite scenes too.
The Phantom of the Opera?
Yep.
A lot of things happen in the next episode too. You know, she has to choose between her friends and fame, and
a heated mistake could lead to
We
expulsion.
learn all about
from
Laura's
Cleve.
secret past.
To be completely honest, all my friends seem to think that the only reason why you're going out with me
Jeff
is
there
because you want a good
and
date.
Jill Jeff Sandusky and Jill Davies play the characters in this storyline with Cleve, and that'll come full hilt soon. But they did a really good job with that.
Is on the mind of Brett.
You're wired, you son of a bitch! It's like you said, Mike, I'm a lover, not a fighter. No, I don't think so.
But will it backfire? Next time on an all-new In Neon.
And of course, that's next time. I don't even know how. When we first did In Neon, there was only supposed to be 6 installments, and then it just turned into this soap
Never
opera.
ending.
Yeah, it was a real soap opera. You know, in front of the camera and behind the camera. And behind the camera too, because we talked about this before we started the commentary. Because at the time, if we talk about it in terms of characters and not who they play, in real life, Brett was dating Laura. Cleve was dating Cindy. I was dating Kim. You had your own girlfriend problems
Couple
at the
of
time. So it was a soap opera behind the camera too, as well as in front of.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the 6th episode. Oh, wait,
Seventh.
7th. We did 7 of these things. And we have a lot more on the way. Of course, we have to resolve the cliffhanger here. And the big burning question is now in the series is that we're promoting it is someone's going to die. And I came up with this idea after it was all over. And I said, wouldn't it be a really good idea to promote it as... I watched an episode of, I think it was 24 with Kiefer Sutherland, and it was like, if you haven't been watching 24, now's the best time to get involved.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thinking, that ought to be our tagline, you know? But let's add something like, because someone's gonna die. And you know people will watch just because they want to know who's gonna die.
Yep. I confess, it's Loafnut.
Yeah, you're a member of our crew. We'll kill him off. And
it happens in the back. You don't really see it, but
yeah. And I'm thinking that'd be a really cool way to, you know, to do things and say someone's going to die. Who will it be? And I think that'll carry us.
Let's have a contest. See if people can guess.
And someone in the show that is, you know, a recurring character will die in the next to the last episode, just before the 2-hour finale. So everybody has to set their VCRs.
Stay tuned.
Stay tuned. Well, that's the 7th episode of In Neon. I want to thank you, Ted, for joining me today. And
thank you for joining us.
Adding some interesting anecdotes to everything. Keep watching. Something I have to add right there. Woodchuck was all excited. His name was in the credits. So I want to thank you for joining me, Ted. Thank you for giving us this hour out of your time to listen to our behind the scenes of In Neon. And we'll see you next time. Maybe we'll have you back.
All right.
Take care, everyone.